Welcome back to Dreams of the Nameless, where learning by doing is less about learning and more about money and politics in this dystopian moment.
I came across a video on Reddit of a kid shocking himself with a stun gun, and inevitably, in the comments section, lots of people claiming to be experts and people had shocked themselves and that sort of thing all come out of the woodworks to debate the finer points of stun guns versus tasers and electrocution and so on. Uh, Kind of interesting. I always liked reading the comments on Reddit. Like, it's pretty much the whole reason I go there. A few people actually claimed to be police and state prison guards and such. My stepdad, in fact, was also a prison guard. And they made a couple of comments that made me stop and think for a moment about how the intention of the training that these people go through in order to carry a taser, they have to get tased. In order to carry mace, they have to be maced. And the intention of that training is to make them empathetic to the feeling, to make them understand what the person will go through, and then hopefully make it so that they hesitate to use those things and keep them as a last resort rather than a first go-to tool. I got to thinking about that though. If we're going to teach them empathy by subjecting them to these non-lethal weapons, if we're teaching them by doing, then shouldn't we also teach them that guns are a last resort? Shouldn't we also make sure that they hesitate to use those? And so why don't we, and I say this seriously, and this is not meant to be like an incitement to violence or anything, but in their training, why aren't police shot while wearing a vest? Like, shouldn't that be an integral part of being allowed to carry a gun? I mean, it's the same logic, or am I making a crazy analogy that doesn't exist?
No, I mean everything you said makes sense. I fall on the side of saying I don't think police should be carrying guns as a default position, just period. I'm not saying for sure that I don't think they should have access to, well, I don't think there should be police at all. I'm an anarchist. But in the current system, I think it would be towards the good if our police did not carry guns as a baseline, even if we still had to give them access to guns, i.e., perhaps they have to be in the trunk, or maybe even if they can carry them, they're not allowed to use them unless they get approval from a commanding officer or something. So having said that, yeah, I guess I was under the impression that they did do training where they were getting shot, whether it was like with rubber bullets or something. Maybe it was non-lethal variants on the bullets, but I guess I was under the impression that there was some kind of intensive training on when to shoot, when not to shoot, when to draw your gun, when not to. But fuck, man, the more of these videos we see, it pretty much just seems like they must do an interview and they go, "You're not racist, are you? Wink, wink. Here's your gun. Go out there and stir up some trouble." And I mean, that kind of seems like what they're doing. So, did that answer your question?
Yeah, more or less. I think that part of the issue with police training in general right now, from my understanding, is that there's not actually any sort of state or federal standards. Maybe there's like some state standards. I know like the state of Iowa actually has a police academy, and I think all the police go there for the state. But if it's anything like some of the corporate trainings I've had, like it may be like this is the top level, like how it's supposed to be, but your local variations may be different. And so they get to these local police departments and local municipalities and are told different things, or are possibly trained more or not, or told to ignore their training or not. Or there's so much variation across the spectrum. There's no consistency. There's no idea, as far as I know, that drives this training nationally, other than just kind of, yeah, whatever works for you guys. So I don't understand that. Like, it hurts my brain to think that we have state police forces that do different things from state to state. I mean, I know the enforcement of different state laws may vary, but shouldn't the policy on guns pretty much just be like, don't fucking use it, like nationwide? Like, if you can avoid using the gun, don't use it. Like,
Well, and I've said this before. I think that if a police officer discharges their weapon, I think that should be the last time that person is allowed to do any kind of field work.
Yeah.
Like that's the sort of like the ultimate, task that you might be called upon as a police officer is to have to draw your weapon and use it, to to serve and protect. And I guess in my view, if we're going to have police and they have to use their weapon, it should be the last time that they're ever put into a situation where they might have to do that. And so it's hard for me to even address this story because of my views on the state in general, and I just have very little faith in our police generally.
And the real reason I ran into, because I'm not disagreeing with you, like I have a lot of let's call it trust issues when it comes to state authorities showing up where I am with guns and demanding things of me. That aside, the responses I got, some of the research I did, it seems like the real reason that we don't have this type of training specifically, or any training generally, it all comes down to fucking cost. It's all about money. It's not about can we have an effective, safe police force. It's not about actually educating and training these people to be good at the job, quote unquote. It's about Kevlar's fucking expensive. Even a level 1 body armor vest of Kevlar can be almost $1,000, more than $1,000, depending on manufacturer, etc. If you're just buying the Kevlar alone, like, it's expensive. And so the real reason I suspect that we're not training these police is that they don't want to spend the money. It's going to cost them money to replace Kevlar, to actually hire an instructor or learn how to do it correctly, and so on. I guess they think it's just easier, cheaper, and makes more sense to just hand them the pistol and go, okay, like, this probably is a bad thing to get shot, but, like, just don't use it, like, good luck. Or do use it, I don't know. It's a fucked up thing that it doesn't prioritize safety. It doesn't prioritize knowledge or actual purposes. It's just about the bottom line.
Yeah, I actually don't know to what degree. I'm sure there's a spectrum of the way that police are taught to handle their sidearms. So I can't really comment and say one way or the other how they're trained. What I can say is that in almost every situation that I've had personally with cops, and every video that you would look up on the topic of police brutality, generally one of the things that seems to be consistent across the board in those situations is the speed with which the police escalate the situation and reach for their weapons and talk about the weapons, and it seems obvious that it's fetishized. And
it's the American cowboy hero fantasy.
Well, but I'm going to take the last word, because I think it's true that the cost is a factor, but the main reason that police they're not trained in the same way as they might be with a taser is not because of the cost. It's rather because the state does not want the citizens to think that they will hesitate to kill you. That's the bottom line, is that the state police have the monopoly on using lethal force against citizens, and they make it super gray so that they can pretty much kill whoever they want, and it's almost impossible for them to be held to the same standard that a regular citizen would be held to if they just murdered people. It's set up so that police can murder people, and that it's very unlikely that it gets treated as murder, and it decreases the likelihood of dissent against them by the general populace. That is why.